Hi everyone, Phil here speaking to you from Spain. I'm in Alicante where I'm covering Sunderland's pre-season tour. I'll be bringing you full coverage from the game against Nottingham Forest on Friday evening and against Eldense on Sunday evening. I'll be doing your typical on the whistle videos after both of those games, so keep your eye out on Twitter during the game, after the game. I'll put my usual call out for questions and we'll discuss the game, who's impressed, what happened, any breaking news, all that kind of stuff. But what I also thought I'd do while I'm out here is I'd try and bring you a bit of insight as to what's going on. And also just cover off some of the main news in some kind of daily update videos. So there's a few things to talk about today. The big news, which actually broke yesterday evening, is that Dan Ballard's not here in Spain with the group. Ballard, obviously one of the key players in this team, really, and someone who I think would have been absolute certainty to start on the opening day of the season against Cardiff. Ballard picked up an injury against South Shields in that opening friendly of the pre-season programme. He went to see a specialist, with Sunderland hoping it wasn't that serious. It's not hugely serious, but it's pretty serious, and he ended up undergoing minor surgery. That means he'll be out for up to 6 weeks. Obviously, we don't know exactly how long he'll be out for. That'll depend on his rehab, how quickly he can recover, all those sorts of things. But what we can say with some certainty is he's not going to play a part in the pre-season programme. That means he's not going to be fit, you would assume, to face Cardiff on the opening day of the season, probably the 3 or 4 games after that. I think that brings a really interesting dynamic to what's going to happen in these 2 games over the weekend, because although Ballard and 09 I think are pretty much inked in as the starting centre-half partnership for the new season when Ballard's fit, there isn't a huge amount of depth there at the moment for a few reasons. Jensen Sealed, who impressed last season, he's out here in Spain, but he's a long way off making a recovery yet. He's certainly not going to be fit to start the season. Nectar Triantis is also out here in Spain, but he missed the friendlies at the weekend. He's got an injury as well. So I think what this basically means is there's a big opportunity here for Leo Yelder and Adji Elise over these 2 friendlies over the weekend, where I'd expect both of them to play centre-half at some point. Now, obviously, we all know about Elise's talent. We all know that he finished the season really well, and that's a huge boost to Sunderland going forward. But he arrived at the club as a centre-half primarily. He's ended up playing mostly at left-back, and he's done brilliantly well. And I think most Sunderland fans would be really happy if Elise played at left-back for much of the season. But of course, you've got to add Dennis Serkinen, who's also shown a huge amount of potential and is fit again, which is a major boost. And I wonder if Elise's got an opportunity here with Ballard's injury to put his hand up to try and make that centre-half spot his own. And I think that's potentially a really exciting prospect for fans, although it's a blow to lose Ballard, to potentially get Elise and Serkinen in the same team, especially as Regis Lebris moves towards a very high press and style. That's going to demand a high line, and that pace could be really vital that both of those bring. The other contender really is Leo Yelder. As I mentioned, Yelder, I think, had an inconsistent start with Sunderland career, but to be fair, I think you would expect that, given that he was in a team struggling for confidence, struggling for fluidity, struggling for form. He also made pretty clear when he arrived that he saw himself as a centre-half first and foremost. Now, he's not had a chance to show what he can do in that position at all. Big opportunity for him coming over the pre-season programme to really put himself in contention. Joe Anderson's also here. Joe Anderson, who joined from Everton about 18 months ago, but was on loan at Shrewsbury last season, had a decent season there. He'll be open to put his hand up, though he did play at left back in the opening friendlies, which maybe suggests that he's not in contention at the moment for a starting berth in the Championship, but we'll see how that develops. So that's a really interesting one to watch. Will Sunderland feel that they need to go back into the transfer market, or will they see the options in this camp and in these games that actually they've got enough to get through that first month, 5-week period and then be ready for when Ballard returns? The other big news really is transfers, and actually at the moment mostly outgoing transfers. It's been a kind of flurry of headlines in recent days about a number of players who could or could not be leaving. And actually a lot of the players who are here in camp have been linked with moves in recent days. So the big one is Trey Hume, who's been linked with a number of clubs over the course of the summer. I think it's fair to say that given his defensive attributes, his age and how quickly he's progressed, there are loads of clubs tracking Trey Hume. Now, there had been reports that Galatasaray had submitted a bid for him. My understanding is that although there may be interest, the club aren't aware of it formally yet, and there's certainly been no bid. Similarly, Pierre Ekwa has been linked with a move to Udinese by Fabrizio Romano. My understanding is that's absolutely true. Sunderland are aware of interest from Udinese and Pierre Ekwa. There's definitely been contact. My understanding is at the moment, the kind of fees that have been talked about or the kind of proposal that's been made is a long, long way from what Sunderland would consider a viable option and a viable bid. You've got to remember that Sunderland turned down some pretty significant bids for Pierre Ekwa last deadline day in the summer. Now, he had a little bit of an inconsistent season, I think, last time out, but it was his first full season in professional football. So I think that someone who were anticipating some ups and downs as he adjusted to playing sort of 3 times a week in the Championship environment. So that's definitely one to watch. But I think the strong theme coming out of the camp and coming out of the club at the moment is, listen, we've proven over the last 3 or 4 windows that we won't just let players go for a pittance. We're not in the habit of selling players unless the bid's huge. We want to keep the core of this team together. So although at the moment it feels a little bit tense because there's so much discussion about players and there's so many reports of interest, at the moment there's actually been very, very few bids, formal bids, and some of them are pretty confident. The thing that they keep stressing is most of these players, in fact pretty much all these players who've been linked with moves away, Trey Hume, Pierre Ekwa, Anthony Patterson, you name them, they're all under long-term contracts and the club are under no financial pressure to sell this window. So I feel really strongly that the team on the first day of the season is going to be a very familiar one, hopefully with some more additions, exciting additions, but I don't envisage any significant sales, and that's certainly the message at the moment amid this flurry of reports. And one thing that I would mention as well is that Sunderland have already fought off pretty significant interest in Joe Bellingham. If they were looking to sell a player this summer, they could already have done that. They could have made a huge profit from Crystal Palace or any of the other top tier clubs tracking Job, but they've had a discussion, they've said they want to keep him, they want to be ambitious. And as it stands, he's very, very happy to stay, and he said that he's kind of signed up for the season and excited about it. So I would take, obviously, there's no doubt with all the talent in the squad, there's going to be loads of interest, and I think more bids will arrive at some stage. But I think generally the view is that the core of this team for the season is in place and that Sunderland are really keen to keep them all. There's obviously the Jack Clarke question. That's a slightly different one because his contractual situation, he's got 2 years left. And obviously, if he's not going to sign a new deal, then there's always a chance that a big bid could force Sunderland to sell rather than let him run his contract down. Having said that, one thing that Sunderland feel very clear is that at the end of the day, if Clarke stays for another year and Sunderland get promoted, the kind of financial reward that will bring far outstrips what they would make from a sale now. So even that isn't a foregone conclusion. So I think that's kind of been the big talking points the last few days and so far from the pre-season tour. But I think that, my prediction, as I've said, would very much be that, I think the core of the team will stay in place for the start of the season. If Sunderland don't get promoted next year, then maybe we're having a different conversation. Maybe some of these players will be a bit more keen to step up and move on, but I don't envisage it at this stage. I'll be back in the next couple of days with hopefully a few more updates. I'll start looking ahead a little bit to the Nottingham Forest fixture, which obviously is happening, on Friday, and maybe we'll have a bit of preview and look at some team news for that. But I hope you've enjoyed this update. I hope it's been a little bit insightful. As I say, keep your eye out for all of our coverage from the matches. Keep an eye out on my Twitter and the Echo Twitter on Friday and Sunday, because I'll be putting a call out for your usual on the whistle questions. So if you're watching the game and you've got a question, or if you're not watching the game and you've got some questions, fire them in then. Cheers for watching.